Jonathan Albin, and this is Game Master Soapbox. Today we're going to be talking about how to deal with interpersonal conflicts at the table. And, pardon me for a second. Sometimes my lighting doesn't always get right, so I always remember to turn it on. All right, so today we're talking about how to deal with interpersonal conflicts at the table. We all love a good game session where everybody gets along and everybody progresses towards their objective. The story develops and advances, the action is exciting, and the dice rolls are amazing. But there are times when a game kind of goes awry, and occasionally it's because of interpersonal conflicts. Sometimes it's random things. It could be, bad sound or a situation, if you're online and you're having problems with communication, that's tough. But sometimes it comes down to the actual people that are at your table, and so we're going to be talking today about how to deal with those. So if you're interested, make sure to stay at. Boy, I'm having a tripping over my tongue today. So if you like what you're seeing, make sure you like and follow and subscribe here and on YouTube at NycosRPG, and let us know if you have any comments by joining us in the chat room, and let us know what you feel. If there's anything you'd like to talk about in particular, we'll add that to the list as well. And let's get started, shall we? So, when we are talking about inter-party conflicts, there's so many different things that we could include. Let's see, we're going to talk about first, we're going to talk about stuff that's off the table. If you have a person that's upset with another person because of something that happened completely non-associated with the game, just don't bring it to the table. If it's going to be a conflict that they have to deal with, resolve it before they get to the table. Just make sure that the material that's going on is not something that's interfering with the way they're playing. Because if you are in a bad mood when you're playing a role-play game, then it's not a good role-playing game and somebody's going to be upset. The real key is that everybody needs to be having fun, right? The purpose of a game master is to actually provide an enjoyable play experience over a period of time, and you can't do that if there are players that are already having problems with each other. So just make sure if there's any off-the-table challenges, as long as they sit down to play, those things are left out of the topics and are not brought up in conversation. That'll be great, So it's not that you want to avoid them, but you just want to keep them away from the actual play environment because you don't want to sully or soil it with what's going on in the real world. The next thing is you need to realize that sometimes the players, not their characters, will bring dramatics to the game. They will have a situation where, I've had people fall in love with other players during the game sessions, which is problematic, and I've had relationships break up at the table. I've had, literally a married couple almost go to blows at the table because they were dealing with stuff as in trying to resolve the problems that they're having in their lives, in their characters, and that's never good. And so the real gauge, I think, is to make sure that players are intrinsically having fun. In other words, watch the faces and watch the awareness that you have with other players. And if you need to, if there's going to be a challenge or a conflict, go ahead and reschedule or even cancel for every reason that. If somebody has any reason at all, if there's going to be a challenge at the table, it's far better to reschedule the session for later, or even cancel a week or whatever if it's going to be helpful to the players for them to resolve these kind of conflicts, because you don't want them taking place during the game. I know that there are things that we get into, like the idea that it's an ongoing campaign and you don't want to miss a session and you only get to play so often. So these are all really valid reasons to talk about it, but ultimately, if you need to reschedule or cancel, just do it, because it's going to be far better. 2, have everybody playing at the table when they're all of the right mindset and are there to enjoy themselves rather than carrying burdens into the game. Now, this also means that as a game master, and actually this is also true of any player at the table, watch each session for any trouble. If you notice that there is something that a player is doing in game that is interfering with or bothering the way you play, that's making it so that you don't feel comfortable or whatever, just make sure it gets mentioned. Watch out every session for players that are acting oddly or acting adversarial with each other, because you have to make sure that every session is as enjoyable as possible. And sometimes these things sneak up on you because the players are being coy, or they're being obtuse, or whatever. They're trying to obscure what's going on. But the reality is that if there are players that are seeming to not have a good time, you need to be able to catch that and try to resolve them as quickly as possible, nipping problems, if you will, in the bud. And you also be in particular aware of player peculiarity. In other words, if a player is giving a challenge in a game session in ways that didn't happen before, there might be something going on. If a player is brooding, distant, whatever, that is not part of their persona and their character in the game, there might be something going on that needs to be addressed. And sometimes the only need to address it is just say, hey, something going on, and make people aware that there's something that might be going on. But on the other hand, sometimes it's brewing for a while and you're just not catching it. So just be sensitive to things that change session over session, because that will give you a kind of indication that something's going on. One of the best tools I have found for handling this is to do an after-action report after the game, or even, if possible, have the players debrief after the game session. And in many of the cases when I do live games, we have a sit-down restaurant near where we play, and we can retire to that location after the session to do an after-action player debrief. Get to know each other better, perhaps in a non-games environment, get to know what's going on with each other. And by doing so, we can actually discuss the things that happen in-game and figure out how to keep them from being a problem in the future. I realize that the real key is that the obligation to the game master is to make every session fun for every player. If players are feeling like they're not getting enough attention, they're not getting enough interaction time, this needs to be addressed. If there's conflicts between players because of things that happen in game, that also needs to be addressed. The point here is that the obligation to have a great time it's focused on the game master, but it's really a factor of every player being able to be intellectually honest when something's going on that they're dissatisfied with. And if there is a challenge, insist on intervention, insist on intervention as necessary. If there is a situation between players and it's not getting better week over week, you need to call for a physical timeout, a cessation of the game session while you resolve it, because these kind of interventions, if you don't pursue them, you end up with problems that get bigger and bigger because the players start to build walls internally, and then it gets ugly. It's not good. It's just historically accurate to say a session that doesn't have a positive encounter ending every time means that there might be something going on that needs to be resolved. And this brings us to the elephant in the room, and that is that on occasion, a player group will have to choose to either separate players out of the game. Sometimes it's as simple as a character. A person is playing a character and they're playing it to the definition they hold, and it's interfering with other players' enjoyment of the game, and therefore there could be a way of handling it by changing out the character. That has worked in certain cases, but there are situations where one or more players have to be separated from the game, and this needs to be done as a collective group. It cannot be just the game master telling somebody they can't play, because that's A, it's not fair for the game master, and B, it's not accurate. If it's a collective decision, then it needs to be a collective decision. And this is the hardest challenge, and I have to say that in every iteration that I've been a game master for all 8 cycles, all 8 long-term campaigns, I've had at least one person that at some point had to be expelled from the game sessions because that person was causing challenges with the other players at the table, or aggressively confrontational with myself or whatever. And so you have to realize that it happens sometimes. Not everybody can play with everybody else at the table. We can't all get along all the time, and so you have to figure out where you're going to. Where is your Waterloo? Where is your Rubicon? At what point do you have to decide enough's enough? And that's a tough decision, but it needs to be made. And being able to to demonstrate that, to show that you're able to get past that point, can actually improve a game session, and things can get back to normal. And sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes an entire group will collapse because of it, and that's, ultimately we can't all get along all the time. So the trick is to try to choose your battles wisely and determine when these things have to happen, and have them quickly, as early in the process as possible, to reduce the amount of baggage that people bring from the table. So with all of this, the ultimate point goes back to the obligation of the game master to have a great time, and so everybody is supposed to be enjoying themselves, and if something's going on and somebody's not enjoying themselves, there needs to be something done. So keep your eye on these things, and if these have been helpful for you, I love any comments you have on that. And what ways do you handle challenges at your table? What kind of conflicts have you had? Put those in the comments, and I also, as the evening wears on, I'm going to be switching over to my other hat, so feel free to ask me anything. We'll be working on a new map tonight for my campaign on Sunday, so I get ahead of the group as far as building out where we're headed. So if you have any questions, feel free to chime in and mention those. If not, I want to thank you for watching Game Master Soapbox and our conversation on how to deal with interpersonal conflicts. If you like what you see, make sure you subscribe and follow us. And if you have any challenges, make sure you put them in the comments. I'll be glad to respond to you. I'm Jonathan Albin. This has been Game Master Soapbox on NycosRPG.